Good morning. My first name is Howard, spelled Howard. Last name is Griffin. That's Griffin, and I am a junior.
Good morning, Investigator Griffin. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury where did you come in from to testify?
I flew in from the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas.
What do you do in that area?
I'm actually a detective for a small agency. The city is called Plato, and I'm currently a detective for that agency.
What kind of cases do you work for the Plano Police Department in Texas?
For Plano Police Department, I'm assigned to a unit called the Capers Unit, and what that simply means is any crime against a person, so it could be a misdemeanor or a felony. I'd be a detective that would investigate that kind of crime.
How long have you been with that department?
I've been with Plano since April of 2000.
Now, did you ever work for any other agencies before then?
I did. I started my law enforcement career with the city of Atlanta, Atlanta Police Department. I got hired in April of 2008, and I left the city November 2019.
Now, when you left the department, what were you working? What kind of cases?
At that particular time, I was assigned to the homicide unit, and I was in that unit in that role for just under 5 years.
What year did you start with the homicide unit of the Atlanta Police Department?
In March of 2015.
And before working for homicide, what was your role right before then?
Before I was assigned to the homicide unit, I was assigned to the Atlanta Police Special Victims Unit as a detective and as a police officer, and I investigated crimes against children.
Now, I wanted to ask you, were you the lead detective on the murder of T.R. Jones?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell the jury how you came to work that case?
Yes. The City of Atlanta Police Department at the time, we had a homicide rotation. It just so happened that I was the top of that rotation. So anytime somebody lost their life, they would call a detective to respond, and it was my turn to actually respond.
What day did you respond?
I believe the date was September 26, 2015.
And when you, where did you go to? Where was the crime scene?
I was initially told to go to the intersection of Hank Aaron and Milton. And when I got to that intersection, of course, I saw an accident. And I think the address that I noted in the police report was 40 Milton Avenue.
Now, what part of Atlanta are those addresses that you responded to?
I think at the time it was the Zone 3 district of Atlanta. So that would be more like southeast of the city.
Now, when you got on scene, how many victims were there?
At that location, there was only one victim. That was actually a deceased young lady by the name of T.R. Jones. And it was brought to my attention that there were 2 more victims, and they were taken to Grady Hospital.
Who were those 2 other victims?
The 2 other victims, female front passenger, her name was Shaquia Duncan, and the back passenger was Shannon Jackson.
Now, Detective Griffin, I want to approach you with what's been marked as 1 triple delta papa through 24 triple delta papa. Investigator Griffin, before you were on the stand, did you have an opportunity to look through those photographs?
Yes, I did.
And what are they?
These are crime scene photographs taken by the crime scene tech who responded at my request.
And are they a fair and accurate depiction of the crime scene photographs for this incident?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves to tender into evidence 1 through 3 triple delta papa and 5 through 24 triple delta papa.
They're admitted.
Now, Investigator Griffin, it's going to come up on the screen before you. I'm going to publish and walk through a few of these exhibits.
Okay.
You also got a couple options behind you. You got a big board there and one behind you. So whichever one works best for you. Thank you. Yes. So So I'm going to publish 1 triple delta papa. Now, Investigator Griffin, is this the street that you were mentioning, Hank Aaron and Milton Avenue?
That's correct. That's the intersection that I was assigned to go to.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Can you describe for the jury what we see in this exhibit?
This is an overturned vehicle operated by the decedent, Miss Tiara Jones. I forget the year, but it was a green in color. I think it was a Mountaineer, Mercury Mountaineer.
Now, when you first responded, did you know any of the facts and circumstances behind what happened?
No. So as it was initially described to me, they thought it was just an accident. As a result, the hit and run unit came and they responded. So they initially processed the crime scene. And then some officers took note of some defects in the rear lift gate, which they thought it might have been from a projectile. And as a result, they started looking for shell casings, which they found. And because they found that, that's when they called me and asked that I respond.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Where were some of the shell casings in relation to the vehicle that was overturned?
So again, if you have the intersection of Hank Aaron and Milton, maybe 50 yards, which is where the accident is. So in between that distance, that's where the shell cases were lined in the street.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Now, what type of shell casings were on scene?
I believe we located 12 spent casings. I think the caliber was a .762.
And do you have familiarity as a homicide detective with shell casings and guns that fire them?
Yes, I know enough to know that that came from an assault rifle or an assault rifle pistol, something of that caliber. It's an assault rifle.
Now, what did you do? I'm going to publish the next exhibit, but ask you a question. What did you do with the shell casings you collected?
Actually, the crime scene technician that responded, she's the one that actually collected them, and then she gave them to me. And what I did was brought them to Atlanta Police, put a barcode on them, and placed them in the property as evidence.
I'm going to publish the next exhibit. Is this a close-up of one of the .762 shell cartridges that you collected?
That's correct.
And this is 12 triple delta papa. Publishing the next exhibit. This is 15 triple delta papa. And going to publish 17 triple delta papa. 19 triple delta papa. 22 triple delta papa. And 24 triple delta papa. Now, Investigator Griffin, with the defects you had mentioned in the vehicle, where were they on the car? The front, the side, the back?
From what I noted, they were in the back near the lift gate.
And were there any firearms that you found on scene?
Yes, I think it was Officer Clayton. He was the first to respond, and he actually found a semi-automatic handgun. I think the caliber was a .45 caliber Springfield.
Where was that .45 caliber Springfield in relation to the vehicle?
As he noted in his report, it was feet away from the vehicle.
Now, after you cleared this scene, did you have any initial leads, or what were your next steps?
No, so the only lead that I had is we had 2 surviving victims, and they were taken to Grady Hospital. So what I did was after I left this crime scene, I went to the hospital to hopefully try to speak to the 2 that were alive.
Were you able to go to Grady? Is that where you went to Grady?
I went to Grady Hospital, that's correct.
When you got to Grady, who did you encounter?
I spoke to the front passenger, Shaquia Duncan, and the rear passenger, Shannon Jackson.
What kind of condition were they in when you met them that day?
Shaquia Duncan, she had a severely injured leg. I think at one point they were talking about it may have had to get amputated, but I'm not sure if that actually happened. So she was in the process of going to have surgery. And Shannon Jackson had, if I'm not mistaken, a lung and a rib injury.
Were you able to speak with them about what happened?
I spoke with both of them briefly. Again, given their condition, I didn't want to have a detailed interview, so I spoke with them briefly.
Now, after speaking with them, what did you do next?
The next thing I did was, of course, try to do some research on the individuals that were inside the vehicle. We call it just a generic search to see if I can find anything about what happened and possibly who done it. And what I was able to find out is that the young man in the backseat, Shannon Jackson.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yes.
Investigator Griffin, when you worked homicides in APD, did you ever consult with the APD gang unit?
Often.
What were the circumstances when you would on a case you were working?
The way that our department was worked.
Sustained.
You said this was September 26, 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you ever have any consultation with anyone in the Atlanta Police Department gang unit to assist you in this investigation?
I did.
Without saying what they said, when was it that they began assisting you?
Within the first 1 or 2 days of the initial investigation.
And after consulting with them, what investigative steps did you take next?
We went back to the hospital to actually go speak with Shaquia Duncan and Shannon Jackson, and I brought those detectives with me to assist.
Without saying what anyone said on this date, were you able to speak with both of them?
I was.
What other personnel, detectives, were with you when you went to visit them?
With me was Detective Dennis, Detective Gaither, and Detective Edwards.
After that secondary follow-up at Grady, what did you do next in your investigation?
Again, tried to go hand out flyers in the community, just try to elicit any help from anybody. And so again, I spoke to a lot of different people who knew the family of the deceased, and of course knew the surviving victims.
Now, let me ask you this. Were you ever able to establish a location of where that vehicle may have been before where it was found at the crime scene?
Yes, I was.
What was that location?
The address was 1192 Pryor. That is it's like a Chevron, JJ's Chicken, and I think there's another restaurant right there.
Now, were you ever able to, or did you try to get any surveillance from that location?
I did. Part of those investigative steps, myself and another detective went to try to find cameras in all those businesses, and we were able to find some cameras in a few of those businesses over there.
Without saying what anyone said, did you have any information or possible directions to go from your conversations at the hospital before getting that surveillance?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you have any, without saying what anyone told you, did you have any possible leads for what you would be looking at in that surveillance video when you obtained it?
Yes, a specific vehicle was of interest to me.
Now, when you obtained that surveillance video, did any specific vehicle stand out to you in relation to the vehicle that T.R. Jones was in?
Yes, specifically a red Camaro.
Now, did you do any investigative work on this red Camaro?
I did.
What did you who had that red Camaro?
I found out that the vehicle was actually owned by Enterprise, and it was rented to a young lady by the name of, excuse me if I mispronounce her name, Archillian Bennett.
Sustained.
Now, Detective Griffin, in your investigation, did an Archillian Bennett ever come up?
It did.
And did you ever come to learn where she lived?
Yes, I did.
Where did she reside?
An address off of,
Your Honor, I'm not asking what anyone told him. Investigator Griffin, are you familiar with the Trestle Tree Apartments?
I am.
How are you familiar with them as an Atlanta Police Department homicide detective?
Well, specifically with this case, that address popped up and I drove over there a couple of times.
So you physically went to that address?
I did.
What street is that address?
I don't know the address, but the street is Confederate.
And was that street, and specifically Trestle Tree Apartments, of note to you when you were looking into Arshillian Bennett?
Yes, it is.
Now, after getting that surveillance video, was there any suspects, or let me ask you this. That red Camaro, what was significant about that car in relation to the vehicle that T.R. Jones was in terms of the people in that vehicle or what they did in relation to the vehicle?
Could you say that one more time?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
What stood out to you about, was there anything suspicious about the people in and around that red Camaro that stood out to you?
The people did. The people stuck out to me. Again, just from looking at the surveillance videos, their interaction with Tiara Jones and Miss Shaquia Duncan.
Now, is there any restaurant at that location?
Yes.
What restaurant is it?
The one specifically that was of note is JJ's Chicken.
And was anyone in the vehicle with T.R. Jones inside that restaurant at any point?
Mr. Shannon Jackson.
And were you ever able to locate any other surveillance video other than at that location?
Other than that location, yes.
And did that assist your investigation?
It did.
Can you explain for the jury how it did?
Well, I got a direction of travel that Tiara Jones went. So what I did was drive that route that was explained to me. And any place that I found cameras, I reached out to the place of business to see if we can try to get surveillance footage.
Can you show the jury where the crime scene was, where the vehicle was found?
The vehicle was found in this address. This is the address that I put, which is 40 Milton Avenue.
And what is that 1192 prior?
1192 prior, that is where JJ's Chicken is in the Chevron gas station.
Now, what is this blue line that is connecting those two addresses?
This blue line, this is the route that I took from the initial spot where the vehicle was found, meaning the red Camaro. So I drove the route that was explained to me, and I did a dry run to see how long it was going to take me to get from that point all the way to the crime scene.
And what vehicle was Miss Tiara Jones driving?
Miss Tiara Jones was driving the green Mountaineer.
And was the red Camaro at 1192 prior?
Yes, it was.
And I wanted to ask you to orient, do you see a Veneer Avenue on this map?
Yes, I do. It's right here.
Do you see a McDaniel Street?
McDaniel Street, yes, McDaniel Street's going to be over here.
Now, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Do you see a Hendricks Avenue?
Hendricks Avenue, yes, I do. Right here.
Do you see a Pryor Street Southwest?
Pryor Street is going to be on this side.
Do you see it between I-85 and Hendricks Avenue, a Pryor Street?
Yes, this is going to be Pryor right here.
And do you see at the top, is there a Cooper Street Southwest?
Cooper Street, yes, Cooper Street is right here.
And to the right of that, what's that street?
Formwell.
And what's to the right of Formwell?
Formwell, and you have Pryor Street.
And why is it, Investigator Griffin, that, well, let me ask you this. Does this appear to go in a roundabout way?
Yes, it does.
And why is that?
Well, again, if you're familiar with the area, There's many different ways to get to this location. So from my investigation, I was under the impression that the red Camaro went this direction. And I wanted to, again, get a picture of how long it would take to get from this side of town to where I believe people of interest may have resided, back over to the crime scene, which is 40 Milton Avenue.
Was there any other vehicles that caught your attention other than the red Camaro?
Yes, there was a black sedan. I don't know the make and model, but there was a black sedan.
Was there anything from reviewing the surveillance that indicated to you those cars, either the people or vehicles, had similar movements?
It appeared they had similar movements. Again, I wasn't able to definitively prove that, but it appeared that they had similar movements.
Now, what was some other steps in your investigation after you did this test drive route?
Again, my goal was to try to speak to anybody that can help me with any type of information. And we started looking into social media accounts of interest.
You can sit back down if you want to.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, Investigator Griffin, was there a specific social media account that became of interest to you?
There was one in particular.
And what was the handle?
I believe it was P92 something. I think it was H, P92H.
Now, in 2015, would Instagram come up in your investigations?
It would.
Or other social media?
It would.
And how would you capture relevant social media investigations you worked?
Twofold. If the account was private, then I would try to obtain some kind of legal process, would be in the form of a search warrant. Or if it was open to the public, I would try to scroll, look at the pictures, look at friends, and just try to capture what I'm seeing by taking screenshots and add them to the case file.
Now, Investigator Griffin, throughout your investigation, did you periodically have either assistance or consultation with either Detective Dennis or Detective Gaither?
Primarily Detective Dennis.
Now, from this social media, were you ever able to identify any suspects that were at 1192 prior that you believe could have been involved in the incident?
Yes, I did.
And did you capture or record those social media?
Yes, I did with the screenshots. Like I mentioned, took a screenshot or a snapshot of it and included it in my police report.
And if you can you give me 1 second? There's a slight delay, but it's going to zoom in here in 1 second. So, Investigator Griffin, while that's coming up, can you help orient for the jury people of interest in this investigation that are depicted in 26 Triple Delta Papa?
Again, you wanted me to say their names or nicknames?
Yes, you can say both, please.
Okay. This gentleman right here, Jamal Ward. The young lady sitting next to him is Archillian Bennett. This young man right here, I forget how to pronounce his first name, but his first initial is D. Last name was Lewis. This gentleman right here is Bobby Hardy, a.k.a. Smoke. And his nickname, I think, was Murrow. And this young man, I think he had a nickname of Ola Player, something similar to that.
And without saying what anyone said, in your investigation, did you ever speak with who you identify with the nickname Smoke?
Yes, I did speak with Smoke.
And in your investigation, did you ever come to have any information from the surveillance that he was present at that gas station before the vehicle with Shannon Stillwell, T.R. Jones, and Miss Duncan left?
That is correct.
I want to also publish for you what's been admitted as 27 Triple Delta Papa. Okay. while I'm getting this Zoom back up line, I'm going to keep. Your Honor, this may be a.
All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you all a limiting instruction at this point. Sometimes evidence is admitted against some parties and not others, or for some counts and not others. When this happens, that evidence can be considered by you, the jury, only as to the party against whom it is offered, and only for the count for which it is offered, and not against any other defendant or for any other count or purpose. In the next part of this witness's testimony, you're going to hear about statements made by defendant Shannon Stillwell, also known as Shannon Jackson. You are to consider those statements only against Mr. Stillwell and only as to count 1. You may not consider those statements as to any other count, and you may not consider those statements in any way in determining the guilt or innocence of any other defendant in this case besides Mr. Stillwell.
Now, Investigator Griffin, did you ever have a third conversation with Shannon Stillwell?
I did.
When was that, time-wise?
I believe it was the 2nd of November, 2015.
And in all your interviews you had with him, in this case, was he a victim, a witness, a suspect? What was he?
No, Shannon Jackson is, matter of fact, a victim in this case.
And when you spoke with him in November, where were you?
In November, I was at Atlanta Police Headquarters. I think the address is 226 Peachtree, if I believe that's correct.
And is that where that interview took place?
That is.
Were you able to get more information in that interview than you were prior?
I was.
Now, do investigators have different interview techniques?
Absolutely.
What is your technique when you're speaking with a witness, a victim, anybody?
Well, I try to be relatable. That's first and foremost. So for the most part, I talk how I would normally talk when I'm not at work. Sometimes I use slang, sometimes I curse, but that's just the way that I speak.
Now, in that interview, can you tell for the jury, did Shannon Stillwell give you any clarity about what happened before they got to 1192 prior?
He did.
Can you describe for the jury how that started? What Shannon Stillwell told you in relation to that?
And specifically what he told me,
or what he said about the events prior to arriving at that location?
It was pretty organic, meaning he was just going to go pick up his child, and en route to go do so, they wanted to get something to eat.
And were both Miss Duncan and Miss Jones in the vehicle with him?
That's correct. Mrs. Tiara Jones was the driver, and Shaquia Duncan was the front passenger. And
what did he tell you happened when they got to that location?
When they got to that location, he meaning Mr. Jackson, went inside to get his food. He waited inside for his food to get done. And while he was inside waiting for his food, that's when he took note of the red Camaro and the individuals that were inside of that red Camaro.
Now, did you ever ask him, or did he ever say in that interview that he recognized anybody at the gas station location?
At the gas station, he specifically said he recognized Bobby Hardy, which is Smoke, and Jamal Ward, which is Merrill.
Were those two individuals in that Instagram photograph we had displayed a few moments ago?
Yes, they were.
Now, what did he say in relation to seeing them there?
Again, he noted that they were there, number one, and he noted that Mr. Bobby Hardy actually approached the vehicle and spoke with either Tiara Jones or Shaquia Duncan. Again, he kept making reference to they, that's where they hang out at. So I got the impression from the interview, he was just aware of them being present.
And did Shannon Stillwell indicate to you that he was friendly, not friendly? Was there any significance to seeing those specific people that day?
Yeah, he was not friendly. Again, I don't want to give the impression that he was like on edge, but he, as he expressed to me, he was just aware of them, and they're not friends, they're not associates. And again, he took note of them, and he brought to my attention another incident that took place.
Now, I want to ask you, what did he say happened once he got, did he ever get his food and walk outside?
He did. So he got his food and walked back to the vehicle. And at that time, that's when Mr. Shaquia Duncan decided to go into the store that Mr. Jackson had just left.
Okay. And what happened next? What did he say happened once they got in the car?
Once they all finally got back into the car, he said that they drove off. I think the Camaro had left first and went to the left. And when they got into their vehicle, the driver was instructed to turn right, which would be north on Pryor. And they were going back to where he lived.
Now, Investigator Griffin, got it. I'm going to, now that the technology's back working, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit for you. Can you orient the jury? Is this another social media post that you pulled in this investigation?
Yes, it is.
Now, do you recognize that area?
I do.
What neighborhood is it?
That's the Trussell Tree community.
And who in this photograph specifically was someone that you were looking at in this investigation?
Again, this is the owner of the account. That's Mr. Lewis, and that's Mr. Kelvin Watts, a.k.a. Shell Cal.
And what does that gentleman on the far right shirt say?
It's an A and a B and a G.
And Investigator Griffin, when you were speaking with defendant Stillwell, did he ever identify for you other people that he believed were either in that red Camaro or close by at the gas station?
Yes, he did.
Who were the people he identified?
He identified Bobby Hardy, Jamal Ward, and Kelvin Watts.
And when you were speaking with him, did y'all do any type of photo lineup?
Yes, a photo lineup was shown.
And what did he describe about what he remembered while they were driving after leaving the gas station but before any shooting took place?
What he described was seeing the red Camaro coming down at a fast rate of speed. It was probably coming south on Pryor. And then he said when he turned the corner, he heard a large revving of an engine. And he said he just took note of the headlights, that it looked like the Camaro that he had saw at the gas station.
And did he say he heard a couple, a few, or a lot of shots?
I believe he gave a count of upwards of 20, is what he told me.
Now, after that interview, and that was that in November?
That's correct.
What else did you do in your investigation?
Well, I did obtain warrants for the 3 individuals that the victim identified, but the investigation continues. So, again, we try to wait for cell phone records so they could be analyzed, and again, just making myself available to anybody that wanted to speak with me as it relates to this investigation.
And Investigator Griffin, did you, after you took out the arrest warrants, did you ever become aware of any of the individuals that an arrest warrant was taken out of that were not indicted?
That is correct.
Who was that individual?
Kelvin Watts.
Now, I want to also ask you and show you something very briefly. I'm going to mark this as 29 triple delta papa, and one brief moment, Your Honor. Investigator Griffin, I'm showing you what's been marked as 29 triple delta papa. What is that?
This is my lead supplement that I submitted to the DA's office.
And I'm going to grab that back from you. Thank you. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of your report in this case?
Yes, it is.
Now, after you took out arrest warrants, did you ever come to learn of any part of your report in 29 triple delta papa that publicly got released?
I was.
How did that come about in terms of what publicly in your report was out there that you saw?
Well, I saw a snapshot of my police report with the picture of the victim in that case, Shannon Jackson.
Now I'm going to zoom in at the top right. What is the handle associated with this account?
YFN. YFN. If you can slide it down just a little bit, please.
Can you see it now?
I can. It'll be YFN BC underscore Nutlife. NUTLIFE.
And on the left-hand side, who is that a picture of?
That's a picture of the victim, Shannon Jackson.
And is this something from what you just referenced, your report of 29 Triple Delta Papa on the left?
Yes, that's the image from my police report.
And without saying what anything said, was there commentary or comments about this?
There was.
And was the general nature of them positive or negative?
Sustained.
Was this of concern to you when you saw this?
It was for me, yes.
Why?
One, my police report is now being published on social media. And two, again, Mr. Shannon Jackson in this particular case was a victim. So that's concerning because they're insinuating something that I didn't appreciate.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cross.